Hi guys, welcome back to an episode of the Black Janissary. But first of all, guys, what is the Black Janissary? Well, actually, the Black Janissary is an Italian podcast dedicated to the world of board games. And under this name, you find also a lot of videos dealing with reviews, opinions, analysis, playthroughs about the main war games on the market. We have decided recently to start a new series based on the magazine Strategy and Tactics, or to be more precise, based on the issues of the magazine that go from number 18 up to number 90. That was the last issue published by SPI. When I'm speaking of the magazine number 18, well, if you want to be more precise, we have to name it Magazine Volume 3, Number 2, published in September-October 1969, but generally I'm using number 18. The number 18 of Strategy and Tactics was the first issue that featured a complete mini-war game. This mini-war game was designed by one of the most important designers of the history of our hobby. I'm speaking of Jim Dunnigan. And to introduce Crete, this is the title of the mini-war game, I'm gonna read some lines written by Jim Dunnigan. And Jim wrote, "We needed a game for the first issue." Well, actually, this Strategy and Tactics is not really the first issue. It's the new period of the magazine. Please remember that the previous issues of Strategy and Tactics didn't include any war game. And according to Jim Dunnigan, Crete, the mini war game, had to be kind of small. I was into the origins of air mobile or air mobile, guys, it depends on the pronunciation. Air mobile, British pronunciation. Air mobile, American pronunciation. Please forgive me. I'm not a native speaker of English language, so please forgive me if sometimes I mispronounce some word. Generally, I follow the American pronunciation, but sometimes I could be wrong. Obviously, guys, I'm a simple Italian guy. And Jim Dunnigan continues, felt Crete would be suitable. The battle was well documented and designing it was easy. With these simple lines, Jim Dunnigan opened a new season, a new era for the history of war games. And Crete, the first real war game to be featured in a magazine, represented a turning point in the history of our hobby. At first, I'm going to have a quick look at the pages of the magazine, and then together we are gonna analyze and play the first turn of Crete. So guys, let's have a look now. Well guys, let's have a quick look at the pages that made up the magazine Strategy and Tactics. Please remember that the magazine was published bi-monthly in 1969 by the Poltron Press, located in New York. It's interesting to notice also two important members of the staff. I'm speaking of Redmond Simonsen and Albert Nofi, the history editor. Redmond Simonsen was the art director. On the left, you find the list about the main articles, Anzi review, and obviously the Crete minigame, the protagonist of the video. Then you find other columns as games, diplomacy, war games, notebook, passing review, outgoing email, and incoming email. There is let me change page. Well, and I have to erase the scribbles. Well, the first article that opens the magazine is about Enzio, the strategic war games published in that year by Evan Hill, and you can read two different opinions, one positive opinion and one negative. On one side, we have the player, the young player that pointed out that Enzio represented a good balance between realism and playability. On the other side, another young player, on the contrary, highlighted that the rules were poorly organized and a little complex. And this attempt to give two different perspectives is very interesting. Then another article that deserves our attention is the article written by Redmond Simonsen entitled "If Looks Could Kill." And Redmond Simonsen didn't appreciate the image chosen for the box cover of the game. He didn't like the portrait of the Italian dictator Mussolini. Well, please remember that Anzio was a strategic game about the Italian campaign of the Second World War. On the contrary, Simonsen proposed a different image that you can see on the right of this page, where you find two German soldiers that are using a machine gun, precisely an MG-34, and also a different title, The Game of Anzio and the War in Italy, 1943-1945. So Simonsen tried to give his interpretation, his idea about the image that had to characterize Enzio. And let's continue with our quick analysis by highlighting the outgoing mail. In this letter from the editor to Strategy and Tactics readers, you have all the changes that characterized the new magazine, the new Strategy and Tactics magazine. And obviously, there is a paragraph dedicated to this innovation, the minigame, and please read between brackets Avalon Hill didn't think of it first. So we have a sort of initial competition, the beginning of the competition between Avalon Hill and the future company SPI. The editor underlines that they had the idea for quite a while. Obviously, this idea is to be well accepted by the readers, and I can assure you, by considering the comments, the following comments about Crete, that the reactions of the readers about the mini war game Crete were absolutely positive. So with this issue, we can affirm that there is that a new era was born. Strategy and Tactics number 18 represented a turning point for not only for the history of the magazine, but also for the history of our beloved hobby. And now, guys, it's time to focus on the minigame Crete, designed by Jim Dunnigan. Let's go!
Well, guys, and finally you have in front of you the three mappers about the mini war game Crete. Well, generally this war game takes about 2 hours to be completed. And the most important thing that you have to remember is that the German player has to land 13 battalion of paratroopers that have to defeat the 43 Allied units. Allied units that are composed of Australians, Greeks, British, and that's all, guys. Only 3 nationalities. And New Zealand troops. We find also the New Zealand troops in this game. Actually, the most important objective at the very beginning of the game is an airfield. So why? Because when the German player is able to seize an airfield, well, you can use, or the German mountain troops can arrive. So, guys, if the German player is not able to take immediately an airfield, well, I think that the task is becomes very, very tough, so it's impossible to win. So, first objective is to take an airfield. But first of all, about the victory conditions, obviously there isn't only an airfield to seize to win this battle. The goal of the game is to score more points than the opponent. And how do you get points? Well, actually you get points by destroying the units and also by taking the airport of Malím. You can see Malím over there. You can get points by seizing Suda Bay here. Then you have another objective in one of the second mini map boards here in the map board called Retimo, and about the map board called Heraklion. And then you have another airfield, let me see where, obviously here, on the map board named Heraklion. So guys, Retimo map board, Heraklion map board, and I'd say Suda Bay map board. Obviously, The two most important objectives are to be found here on the main mapboard. But you don't have to forget other two objectives in the smaller maps. So guys, at first, what about the terrain? Obviously guys, we are speaking of an old mapboard. These strange hexes, please remember that the designer uses the word square instead of the word hex or hexagon. So guys, when you find square, you have to mean hexagon. Weird choice, but guys, please remember that in every case we have a hexagon grid that is superimposed the mapboard. So rough terrain, obviously by using the black color, and a very difficult terrain to distinguish. In every case, rough terrain. These are the roads, thick black lines. Then we have the towns, for example, Kenya, well, this is the town. And then it's another problem is with the C-axis. And the C-axis are difficult to distinguish, so I suggest to photocopy the mapboards and to use a blue pencil to highlight better these C-axis, where obviously it's not possible to enter, but please remember that the half axis can be used as normal land axis. Then guys, you don't have to forget that these three mapboards are connected through this exit hex, where you find a big X. So Suda Bay, the mapboard of Suda Bay, is connected to Retimo by using these two axes, exit hex and enter hex. So guys, you can follow this road to enter Retimo. And from Retimo to Heraklion, well, you have another exit here, the big X, that is connected to this other big X in the mapboard called Heraklion. So, when you are able to understand the main objectives, you have an idea about the positions of the defenders. Well, the German player is ready to drop his paratroopers battalions. So please remember that someone has tried to, beyond the victory that you can get by scoring more points than the opponents, well, a second interpretation suggests also to use the levels, three different levels of victory, by introducing the losses that the German player can suffer with the paratroopers battalion. So please remember this important fact that is not to be found in the original rules, but is to be found in a sort of clarification that the Poltron Press released in a second time. Then please remember that I'm using a different or better better quality, a combat result table that is surely better than the previous one. I have downloaded these tables from Board Game Geek, Why tables? Because guys, when you're attacking, you can choose between two tables. A so-called all-out attack table and another one that is called limited attack table. The player decides, but in my opinion they are very similar. Probably after by considering the several columns, it's better using the all-out attack table from 3-1 to 7 or more to 1. And what are the possible results? Well, first of all, you have destroy, DE, the defender is destroyed, quite simple to understand. AE, the attacker is destroyed, so please notice when you're attacking 1 to 2, 1 to 3, AE, so the attacker destroyed or eliminated after 2 to 1 disappears. So it's better attacking with the odds of 3 to 1. And exchange, you have to, quite simple to understand, the attacker has to remove combat factors at least equal to the small force eliminated, and a not so common result is the CA, counter attack. The defender is must immediately counter attack, and or better, must immediately counter attack, or he can choose to retreat from the square, or better, from the hex. Well, please remember that the Crete minigame has 10 turns. You have the time record track, and then you have the tracks about the victory points. Please remember, I repeat guys, you can download these tables from Board Game Geek, from the site Board Game Geek. Then, what can we say more? Well, obviously guys, I haven't said anything about the counters. Very simple. The first digit is the strength of the unit. The second digit represents the movement points. So if you notice, I have tried to set up the ally units by following a precise idea, that is to defend the main objectives. So Malim, the airfield, Malim airfield, the town of Suda Bay, Heraklion airfield, and Retimo airfield. And above all, please remember that before starting, the German player has to write down secretly, in secret, the map board on which he desires to drop his battalions. So, for example, guys, you can decide to use 6 battalions on the first map board. Please remember, secretly, before the allied player set up his units. Then you can decide to drop other 3 battalions here, and without you don't need to indicate the right hexes. Simply you have to determine the right map board, and then for example, in this case, you can decide to drop other 4 battalions here. My suggestion is not to use all the available battalions immediately. Why? Because such way the allied player doesn't know exactly where you have decided to land your units. Let me see if I'm forgetting something. Yes, guys, please remember, very important, the deterrent effects. When your units are occupying a rough terrain, your units are doubled. The same is true about the town. This black spot represents a town. So this unit 4 has a value of 8 if is located in a town. And then, the roads, these black lines, triples the movement points allowed. I have already highlighted the exit hexes, and guys, that's all. By considering my simulation, my games, and what I read on the comments coming from Board Game Geek, I say that the game, and I agree with one of the players that wrote a very complete comment on Board Game Geek. Well, the game quickly becomes a pitched battle for one or more airfields. Obviously, please put apart Suda Bay. Why? Because the German player has a desperate necessity to seize Malim, to let his mountain troops to enter the Marburg. And the British units, or better, the Allied units, have to find a successful defense. I find that by considering, guys, I was forgetting. Please remember that the German attacks can be supported by some aircraft. So, for example, this is an aircraft unit that has a value of 3. So these 3 points can be added to the attack strength of a German unit. The stacking, you can stack on each hex only 3 units, no more. And guys, all in all, by considering that this was the first war game ever included in a magazine, we are speaking of 1969, you find a lot of mechanics that will be used in many following war games, and in spite of the poor quality, this war game can still be considered acceptable nowadays. So I think that yes, we have a lot of new playing systems today, but the traditional hex and counter war game found with the mini war game Crete really a very good starting point. So guys, that's all. I hope to have produced, to have made a good video to remember the tradition and the first war game that was ever included in Strategy and Tactics, in the Strategy and Tactics magazine. Please remember that our next episode will be dedicated to the Blitzkrieg module that was produced to improve the original Blitzkrieg created by Evan Hill. So guys, stay tuned, and I hope to have your attention next time. Bye, guys.